John Galliano is here. He was one of the most acclaimed fashion designers in the world. For many years, he was a creative force behind Christian Dior and his own label, John Galliano. Then, at a small Parisian bar near his home, he, on more than one occasion, said the most outrageous things. They were racist, anti-Semitic, and hateful. One of those incidents from 2010 was filmed. The video went viral. Here is that video.
I love Hitler. People like you would be dead today. Your mothers, your forefathers would be gassed.
Oh my God. Do you have a problem?
With you, yeah.
When that video was released, John Galliano became the subject of international scorn. He was fired. He was convicted. He has apologized, and he has entered rehabilitation. This is his first television interview since the incident. He did talk with Ingrid Sishi for a remarkable piece she wrote for Vanity Fair magazine that is on our newsstands today. I was asked if I would do this interview, and I, of course, said yes. Last night on this program, I did two segments, one on the demonstrations on Turkey, another on surveillance of Americans by the United States government. Another night, we might talk to a brilliant director or celebrate a new discovery in science. All of these conversations are driven by my curiosity about the world we live in and the human condition. The question is often why we do the things we do in politics, in life, and how to make sense of them. And so it is that we talk to John Galliano tonight about what made a man of his distinction in a moment of fury use some of the most vile, anti-Semitic, racist language one could use. How does one go from the top to the bottom by one's own actions? And what does it take to recover personally? This conversation is not about rehabilitation or about prosecution. It is about understanding why. It is about accountability and responsibility. It is about great creativity and troubling addiction. And it is about John Galliano, who came from Gibraltar to London to Paris to New York, and he took over the world of fashion only to fall at his own hand. I am pleased to have him here on this program tonight. I say to him, I'm glad he's here, and there is much to talk about. But thank you for coming here for the first conversation on television.
Thank you for having me, Charlie. I'm very grateful.
Okay. Let me begin with what was the best moment of your career? When did you feel on top of the world?
I think the best moment of my career was when I moved to Paris to start off my own société, the House of John Galliano. And that was soon followed by the appointment at the House of Dior. That was really one of the great highlights of my life.
Characterize, before you say what was the worst, how would you define yourself? I mean, what was it that made John Galliano John Galliano?
I'm a romantic. I love superb craftsmanship, tailoring. In my cutting skills, I express myself through the bias cut, which is a very sensual way of cutting. I would say that's kind of the codes, if you like, or what represents the John Galliano fashion.
When you were at your best, were you as good as it gets?
Well, I certainly gave 500% when I was there.
And you loved it?
I loved it.
It was what you were born to do.
Yeah.
From early on, you...
not so early, not as a baby. I wasn't dressing dolls and stuff like that. That kind of happened a little later. I went to Wilson's Grammar School for boys. I found it hard to concentrate there because of the bullying. I was gay. I was an immigrant who'd just moved to South London at the age of 6 with my mum, my dad, and 2 sisters. So that was quite a culture shock, and I've only since discovered quite a traumatic move for me. After that, because I couldn't concentrate, because a lot of time was just spent working out how to escape the bullying, or catching an earlier train, or hanging back to catch the later train, and working out what carriages to travel in. I mean, it did affect my studies at school. So I went to a college for further education where I studied Spanish A-level and French A-level and English literature. And at that place, there was a subsidiary class, art class. And really, that was my first initial introduction to drawing. And there, it was very natural. I loved drawing. I loved the line, the draftsmanship. And then they encouraged me to apply to another school, which was purely art school. And I worked on textiles and printed textiles and drawing. And then they said, well, you draw like a god. You should apply to St. Martin's School of Art, which I did. I applied for the 4-year course. It's called a sandwich course. It's quite an open course. And in the 3rd year of that 4th year, I specialised in design. Sorry, I skipped a year. I went there and did foundation first, which is where they loosen you up. Any inhibitions you have, you can express yourself. I was throwing buckets of blue paint against the wall. You know, I'd come from this boys' school, so suddenly at St. Martin's I was with people that were more like me.
And so you went on to this remarkable career in fashion. So people ask, John, how could you say the things that you said? We heard some of them. Just to repeat them, because people are stunned to know that a man who had opportunities, who knew the most interesting people around the world, who had access to knowledge, and so much, could say things like, that were racist, like effing Asian bastard, I'm going to kill you, dirty Jew face. I love Hitler. People like you should be dead. How could you say that? What's your own explanation?
No one was more shocked than myself, Charlie. I mean, I just saw that footage you showed and it threw me quite. At that point in my career, I had become what is known as a blackout drinker. It's where one can't transfer short-term memory into long-term memory. So I have no memory of that event.
You remember none of these words?
No.
You remember being there?
No. I don't even remember, I wasn't aware that I had been filmed.
But this
I was in a blackout. In instances like that, what I've since discovered, because I too wanted to know where that hate came from, I've discovered that when one is a blackout drinker, what happens is that it can release paranoia of such a stage that it can trigger frustrations from childhood. And due to that, it can trigger a self-defense mechanism. Now, having had quite a tough time at school and being subjected, persecuted, bullied, called all sorts of names, as children do, and living a lie, really, because I was gay, but I couldn't admit to that at home. So, honestly, there was no... I couldn't escape. Now, also, round about the time of that event, I was heavily researching for my menswear collection, the John Galliano menswear collection, which was inspired by the life of... sorry, I've gone blank of that video. Rudolf Nureyev,
yes.
Who had said some anti-Semite things. When I research, I really go into it. I need to know everything. Where she lives, does she read by candlelight or gaslight, or the colour of her hair dye, the scent on her breath, is it gin, the powder on her makeup? It helps me to create a character, sometimes taken from paintings, inspired by paintings, and then I create a character fiction. So I'm living it, I'm breathing it. I'm not making excuses at all, but this is the work that I've done since that event, to try and find out. My dear friend, Mr. Jonathan Newhouse, reached out to me in the early days, and I rang him back because he was quite tough with me on the phone. He said, you know, John, you've let a lot of people down. What you said was disgusting.
You recognized that what you said was hateful, vile, anti-Semitic.
Of course.
You do.
Yes.
And you apologize to everybody. In the sight of those words, from the sound of those words.
I do. I apologize, and I am trying to make amends in the best way that I can.
Here's what's troubling to some. This wasn't just one incident. It was more than one.
That's correct.
You didn't just do this one night when you were...
No, that's correct.
So they ask themselves, is this a pattern with John? You know, for whatever reason.
Well, a pattern in that it triggered off that self-defense mechanism
What
again. And the taunts. I mean, I grew up in, I should explain, Charlie, I grew up in South London.
Right.
And I can't remember any anti-Semitic taunts, but I do remember other racial taunts.
Yeah.
First wave of immigrants, a melting pot of cultures. And I would have heard those kind of taunts. Fear.
You can't look for an excuse in what you have done. And you can't, in a sense, say, this explains everything.
No, I mean, no, this is, I just wanted to say that because that's part of the work I've been doing in these past 2 years and 3 months. I'm 2 years and 3 months sober. It's a part of the work. And it was actually the one that inspired me to dig deep and try and find out.
It was Jonathan Newhouse.
Well, Jonathan Newhouse, and then he introduced me to Mr. Abraham Foxman, the president of the Anti-Defamation League. Mr. Foxman had reached out to me when all this went off.
And what did he say to you when he came to you?
Well, the first time I was still very, very sick. I mean, when you see that video, I'm in the throes of my disease.
And how will you define your disease?
It's a cunning, baffling disease. It creeps up on you, and you become a slave to it, a complete slave to it.
But you recognize it does not excuse the behavior. Whatever condition you were in does not excuse this behavior.
No, of course I recognize that. Yes, I do.
There are some people who have said to me,
excuse me,
you know, that after Stephen Robinson died, did I say that correctly?
Yes.
A great friend of yours and a colleague of yours who died.
Stephen was like my son.
Like your son.
Yeah.
And he died of a heart attack?
That's right.
Yeah. That after that you were never the same.
You know, Stephen and I started this adventure from London when things weren't working out, and I decided I wanted to be international. I wanted to find the right funding and be able to produce these beautiful clothes. You know, Stephen believed in me. And together, you know, we left London. We didn't have any money. I don't know how we got to Paris. We did, and we slept on friends' floors, and as long as I could see the moonlight, I was happy. So Stephen was there right at the beginning. I mean, he came as a stagiaire, a student placement, you know, counting buttons, and then worked his way through. He was a brilliant, brilliant man, and then became my right-hand man.
Instrumental to your success, crucial to your success.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And then he's gone.
Yeah.
Was that the beginning of what ended up in February of 2011?
I mean, that was a part of it, Charlie, yeah. But also not dealing with my emotions, not understanding my emotions. Along with all the successes came more collections.
More demands.
At that moment, I was producing 32 collections a year between the House of Galliano and the House of Dior. And each collection would comprise of up to 1,000 pieces. Would you like me to run through the collections?
No.
We don't have time, I don't think.
No. I take your word from and friend's word that you were very, very, very good. But I also know that during that period between 2007 and you know, there were many people concerned about you, concerned about addiction, concerned about drugs, concerned about alcohol, concerned about binges, concerned about a guy who would be missing in action. And I also know you know, that two people who'd meant a lot to you came to you and tried to intervene, Mr. Arnault and Mr. Toledano. Literally an intervention to say you are destroying your life and career. Am I right?
I wouldn't call it an intervention.
What would you call it? A warning?
They told me that I should do something about it.
About what?
Well, there had been incidents when I had travelled abroad, New York or China, where there had been complaints.
Complaints about?
About me, my behaviour, or an assistant had rung to say that John's not well at all and we need to get him back to Paris. And then they would fly my boyfriend over.
Alex would come over and take you home.
That's right.
Do you look back now and say that was a forerunner to what happened to me in February?
Yeah, it was getting worse and worse, and I was mixing alcohol with benzos, which is a lethal.
Why were you doing it? Because of the pressure? Is this what the pressure of being with all the demands of a top fashion designer?
I thought that was the right way to deal with it. I mean, by then I was a slave to alcohol. Then I would take the Valium to stop the shaking so I could do the fittings, and then the sleeping pills so that I could sleep. I was traveling a lot with the jet lag, and so, I mean, my life became unmanageable.
Unmanageable. And so friends saw you and tried to help, and you rebuffed them.
Well, you know, when you're an addict, you're very clever. I was a fully functioning addict. I mean, I would hide the drink. I would hide. I knew where my pills were and when I needed them. I would throw myself into the gym. I would go on the latest diet. I would, you know, I would produce. I would turn out the goods. So when I was doing that, it was okay. No one, it was fine. And as long as, you know, John took his bow on the runway and the collection was merchandised and marketed and the work was done. I should add that the drinking did creep up on me very slowly. It started cyclically. After each collection, after each creative high, there'd be this crash. And then there were all these, I used the drink to stop the voices. There were so many voices. Already in real life, there were so many questions. I would use the alcohol to quieten the voices, but of course with the increase of the collection, that cycle became faster and faster and faster, where there was like a collection every 4 weeks.
Should we hold people responsible because they didn't stop you?
No, I take complete responsibility. I was not honest. I should have said, look, guys, help. I need a bigger team, or I can't do it, or I've got a problem. I mean, I was self-willing as well, all those things that one does. Humans do. I mean,
do you believe?
I've since, you know, sometimes I was acting like God, and now I'm not. Now I know I'm not in the driving seat, and I listen and talk to God daily.
So you're trying to come to grips with what you were?
Trying to come to grips with Juan Carlos Antonio Galliano Guillen, the young child that I lost somewhere along the line. The boy that was nice, that people liked.
When Alexander McQueen, who sat at this table with me, committed suicide, what did you think?
Many things, Charlie. I mean, I knew Alexander. I knew Lee. I understood.
What did you understand?
That loneliness, that pain, that, I mean, as addicts, we're in search of perfection. We're setting that bar impossibly high. We don't understand when we're doing it, and people say, wow, how are you going to top that? And we're like, well, yeah, we're going to, don't worry. That's what, you know, makes us wake up in the morning. I was very sad.
But you think the lifestyle that he and both of you had contributed? He also had some medical issues that we all are aware of. that had nothing to do with alcohol or drugs?
I don't know what you mean by lifestyle. I mean,
well, the style of getting up in the morning and knowing you got to top that, and the style that you were in the center of public attention, and you know everybody's eyes are on you, and you know that every day you're going to be judged not by the past collection but by the next collection.
Yeah, you're only as good as the last.
Only as good as your last collection.
That's right, which is an enormous pressure. Absolutely, but yes.
Some people would like to make some connection between the most creative people and their emotional instability. Do you buy into that?
No. Excuse me, I mean, in the early days I was incredibly creative and productive, and I loved the research trips. I loved the creation, finding technical solutions to creative challenges. I didn't need alcohol and the pills for that.
So what changed?
What changed was I was afraid to say no, that little word, N-O, because I thought it showed weakness. And with more and more success, I would just say yes and keep on taking more work on, which took its toll,
Meaning you're sitting here today explaining the fall.
Explaining the fall, I'm so grateful that I am alive, not for what happened, but as a result of what happened, I have been able to spend some time on myself, understand these emotions that I couldn't express, the difference between emotions and feelings and how I can change that. Before I would be upset or angry and it would go on for 4 days or 5 days. Now I know that I can change that. I wasn't aware of that before. I mean, there's many things like that. Finally admitting as well all these resentments I had and all this anger, built up anger.
You're now talking about your childhood or more?
More. I mean, I suppressed everything as a child. I couldn't talk about it at home, and when I was at school, I couldn't really express myself. So this was all bottled up, really, and later on in life, in that state that I found myself in, it came up, and I was emotionally, spiritually, physically, mentally bankrupt. I mean, I didn't know it, but I had a very big breakdown.
What do you mean by breakdown?
Nervous breakdown, emotional breakdown, mental breakdown. I didn't know, and I couldn't begin to describe how that felt, but I was in denial. I was still in denial even until a week into Arizona.
You went to Arizona for rehabilitation?
I went to Arizona for rehabilitation when, yeah, I was shown that video and I was on that plane. Even there, when I was going to those big meetings at the beginning, I was still in denial. When everyone introduced themselves, I would introduce myself as Johnny G. My name was Johnny G there. I'm a troubled soul, I'm a lost soul. It wasn't until a week in that I could say, I'm an alcoholic, I'm an addict.
And today you're a sober addict and alcoholic.
Yeah, I will be.
Is that how you define yourself?
Yeah, I will be in recovery for the rest of my life. And I bear that tattoo on my soul forever, which is a constant reminder of the evil of drink and drugs, both of which one could buy over the counter in Europe.
I hear you. And you're looking at your childhood, and you look at the pressure of your life, and you look at the addiction, and you say, I don't remember anything I said. I now know what I said. So people say at that moment when they hear your story, I know a lot of people are addicted who don't say those kinds of things. I love Hitler, and you should be dead. I know a lot of people who had a troubled childhood, and do not say the kinds of things that you said. They may say some awful things, but there seems to be, you went further than most people in terms, and now it's easy to say, I don't remember it, and I did it because I was addict and because I had a troubled childhood. It's too easy, some people want to say. What do you say to them?
I've spent 2 years and 3 months followed by therapists, working with toxicologists and professors in France to find the answer. It's true, many people say in vino veritas.
Yes.
I've since discovered that in vino veritas it's not quite as simple as that. Yes, alcohol does loosen up inhibitions, but it's what's floating around in the subconscious that can be caught up. As I said, as a defense mechanism that was triggered when I was being persecuted. I mean, the opening line of that video is, "Are you Aryan? Is your hair really blonde?" Now that would have triggered something.
What do you mean?
It would have triggered something. As I mentioned earlier, Charlie, I had been researching
Nureyev
and his life, and that menswear collection was about to be shown. All those things could have been swimming around.
Do you worry that somehow that creativity, you can't find that again? That somehow all of this will do damage, so that what gave you life may not be able to turn back on.
I did worry about that, especially when I was in the rehabilitation center in Arizona. I was invited to attend art classes, and I couldn't even pick up a pencil because that just brought back the memories flooding back. I equated creation with the things I'd said. I've worked on that since, and they encouraged me to start writing because I couldn't talk. I was pretty monosyllabic at that point. So I would write and write and write, and that was creative. Pretty much anything I apply myself to is done in a creative way. I could be walking down the street and still my eye is working. I'm looking at people, walking down the road, a market, an exhibition. All those things hadn't stopped. That part of the process hadn't stopped. And then when I was invited by Oscar de la Renta as a residency to work with him on his collection, the collection was quite well underway. At first I thought I just couldn't, because I hadn't been in a studio for 2 years. And then I decided that yes, I would. Oscar was so charming and so gentle and understood exactly what I was going through and said, like, no deliverables, just come over here, which I did. I had a panic attack when I arrived, only because of the ateliers. I wanted to meet the ateliers because they're the family I lost at John Galliano. So I ran to the bathroom and threw myself on my knees and said the Serenity Prayer, and then I came outside and I went into the workroom and introduced myself to all those lovely ladies, the tailors and the seamstresses in their white coats, and then it was fine. My shoulders kind of relaxed, and then I sat with Oscar and he would ask what I thought about things, and that it's very difficult to sit there when you see all the beautiful fabrics and colours, and then this creative, it just came back when I saw the girl walk in with partially draped fabric.
So all the instincts, all the experience, everything kicked in.
It was just an amazing feeling that I thought maybe I would never feel again, because I'd done the earlier part, the research part, the being inspired, but to actually have my fingers on fabric and colours and to drape on the girl and to work with Oscar was, it was just so an amazing feeling.
Does part of you just want to go off somewhere and design dresses?
That's what I want to do, yeah.
Is it possible that you and Oscar will somehow come together and you will, work with him over the long run so that there can be a collaboration and you, a younger man than he is, can...
That would be wonderful.
Is that what you want?
Yes, but I know that I have to do this work before.
What work?
The atonement.
What do you mean by atonement?
Forgiveness. I'm
you have to be asked for forgiveness.
Yeah,
and you have to be forgiven. Is that what you said?
Yes.
You have to ask for forgiveness and you have to be forgiven.
Well, I can't ask for forgiveness. As I said earlier, Charlie, I think that's something that's bestowed to you. It's given to you if people think you deserve it. So what I'm trying to do is to give back, to share. And you may have heard I wanted to teach, to share with young creatives, which happened in London. Finally it happened. At first it was a bit difficult, and I also offered to teach at Parsons and the Schenker University, but unfortunately they both fell through at the last minute, which was a real shame. But you know, I'll continue to try, and maybe one day that will happen. These are things that I'm happy to do, and if anyone has any ideas how to make amends, please.
Yeah. What's going to be the hardest thing for you in terms of climbing back to where you find some peace and an ability to use your talents to the fullest use along lines of excellence? What's going to be the difficult part of the route? Or do you believe you have already passed that?
No, sobriety is not easy, Charlie. It's been a difficult
So
journey.
you're at risk from falling off at any time?
Yes, that can happen. I have to be honest with you. As long as I'm completely aware that I'm powerless over alcohol, you know, and one drink for me would be not enough, and that one drink would be too much. You know, I mentioned earlier that that incident is a daily reminder that I don't want to go there.
Do you worry about this as well? I mean, you had, according to people I talked to, you really had a wonderful understanding of women. You knew how to...
I love women, yeah.
But you understood in a way that people wanted and imagined that you understood what made them remarkably... you had a real sense of connection to the world around you so that you could bring that in terms of how you design clothes. But it was of a time and a day. Well, you have to be equally relevant to the times that you work in today than you were. And can you be that? And do you ask that question?
Well, as a designer, that will be a reflection of society and what's going on in society today. I think the creative process will be the same for me, and I enjoy that, and it brings a richness to the collection. But of course, the collections have to be relevant. I mean, I think, you know, I dare women to dream. They will always want beautifully cut clothes, a beautifully cut jacket. There will always be that desire. Those clothes will always be relevant.
What separates the good from the great designers?
Well, I don't know how to answer that question, sorry.
I bet you do. I mean, you understand what fashion is at its best and how to make it.
Well,
and that's different.
I was very lucky, too. I mean, I was a couturier, which is a dressmaker in its highest form. I was a couturier at the House of Dior. And there, to create clothes where you would spin the yarn, the cloth, artists would paint the fabric, the beading, the feather work, defining a line, volumes, a lightness. I mean, that was magical. And
which part were you best at?
I mean, I love the whole creative process. I love the toiling. We were working with the girls and draping and creating volumes and shape. Especially in the haute couture world, where I would treat that almost like the parfum. It was where we had the time and resources to really explore a line. That in itself would inform the ready-to-wear collections, accessories, etc., etc. It was a wonderful way of working, wonderful way of working.
As I said in introducing you, you were at the top of the game, and we have some video of what it was that put you there. Roll tape. So, define your style. Define what I just saw, because I'm going to show you another example of your style too.
Okay, well, I believe that was part of the collection Dior Haute Couture. So that was the highest form of dressmaking. I was also responsible for the ready-to-wear, the jewelry, accessories, handbags, shoes, all the other affiliated products.
Fragrances.
Fragrances too, yes, and the image that went with them, and then the link up with actresses that I felt who I loved their creative process too, and I felt would work really well with the product and would be believable.
And was it hard for you when Natalie Portman said what she said?
She was right to say what she said. What I said was disgusting.
Mm-hmm. So you understood immediately that when she said, "I'm disassociating myself."
Yes.
Have you made amends to try to come back and to apologize and to reconnect?
With Natalie, not yet, but I will be. Yes.
Roll tape again. This is again about you and what made you who you were. Here it is. When you see that man, what do you think?
I mean, there's a certain joy. I can see the joy, but I can also feel the trouble.
The trouble there?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
To produce collections like that, Charlie, it takes so much from you. And that's without the press that one has to do straight after a show like that. So maybe you've not slept for several nights, and it's quite a tradition. The ateliers will work all night for you on haute couture, and they will fit all through the night. The cars are arriving. It's an enormous pressure, and then there are all the interviews. There'll be 25 film crews outside, after which then you have to... and I just kept going.
Just kept going?
Yeah.
So in a sense, this is part of the story of what happened to John Galliano.
Yes.
What do you think you have to do now? What steps do you have to take?
I'm concentrating on my recovery daily.
That's 2.5 years.
Yes. But that'll be a lifetime. A lifetime work. And I'm trying to make amends. I've upset many people. Even today I'm discovering just how many.
You upset?
Yeah.
And what do you say to them? Same thing you say to me?
I have reached out to them. Some have agreed to see me, and I explain what happened. There have been positive meetings.
What about Sidney Toledano and Bernard Arnault?
Actually, before I went to rehab, I did try to reach out to them, but my calls were not accepted. Quite recently, I tried to reach out as well, but the message I got was that perhaps it was too early.
Too early.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, you've had two big friends, Oscar de la Renta and Anna Wintour.
Yes.
What has Anna Wintour meant?
So much to me. I mean, just one lunch with Anna, I feel so inspired after the lunch. You know, I've been spending a lot of time in the country, in the mountains, and quite solitary on my own. And then she's an amazing lady, and she inspires me.
Who else has been? Jonathan Newhouse has been a friend.
Jonathan has been like a brother I never had, really. He's been helping me understand. I mean, when I first got the call from, well, I told you he was quite tough, but there was a sensitivity there.
Tough meaning what? What did he say?
He was not there to see how he was. John, you really messed up. You've let down a lot of people.
Yeah.
I'm really disappointed.
You betrayed us almost, right?
Mm. Yeah.
We trusted you and you betrayed us.
Yeah.
But we're not going to give up on you?
I rang back because that initial conversation with Jonathan just stuck in my mind. And then the friendship developed more. It was, I mean, almost daily I would write emails to him if I would just let him know what my feelings were. And he's been guiding me. He's a great man.
How is he helped you?
One of my wise men.
Yes, you need a wise man. And wise women, too, and you got both, it seems like. People don't take your phone calls anymore, like they did.
It was a very big cleansing. Yes.
Cleansing. So
I call it cleansing now.
Meaning that you found out who your friends are, or meaning what?
Exactly that, Charlie, yeah. Exactly that. And then there are people that I hadn't seen for maybe 20 years that came forward and, John, we're here. If you need us, you can rely on us. So that, too, was quite an incredible feeling.
How do you make sure that your analysis of why?
Sorry?
How do you make sure that you're not fooling yourself, that your analysis of why, and that your commitment to never let this kind of thing happen again, where you are addicted to the point of extraordinary bad behavior, doesn't happen again? How do you make sure that you are on the right track? How do you make sure that your answers are the right answers?
I never want to be in that place again. Charlie, that's... you've read about hell. That was hell for me. Learning all the things I've learned and the tools that I've been given, I try to use them in my daily life, every day, and that's the way that I will be able to move forward, I believe.
Your relationship survived?
With Alexei?
Yes.
Yeah, that's, yeah, we've been together for 14 years.
So what's the next 6 months? Just the next 6 months.
You know, Charlie, I still...
What do you think of in
step by
days?
step, day by day for me, I try not to... That was part of my problem before, that I was so worrying about what had happened yesterday, and my head was in 2018. And having done the work I've done, I realize now that that wasn't living, that living was now, the present, being connected. So in 6 months' time, I mean, I don't have that answer. I don't know.
Is it fair to you to say the following? Some people look at that period after what I suggested happened to you and the loss of some very close people and the addiction, that the work had lost some of its edge? That you, and the reason that people came to you strongly and said you got to change was because not only were you destroying yourself, but it was destroying your work.
You know, the work, the sales were still good.
Was it good in your mind, though?
In my mind, I mean, it could always be much better, and especially now in my lucid state, yes. I mean, yeah, of course it could be much better. I was doing what I felt was right for the two houses.
For both the house
Yes.
of Galliano and the house of Dior.
That's correct.
You would, but you weren't, because you couldn't function as well as you should function because of all the things that we said. These were troubling times for many people.
Yes, but I was still producing, Charlie.
Yeah.
I was producing.
You were an addict who was performing.
Very much so. A functioning addict, I believe it's called.
As you come to understand it.
As I've come to understand it now.
You know, when I started this conversation with you, I said, you know, the things that we do in this program is try to understand the human condition and how people do what they do and how they come to understand that. And you seem to, in this conversation, think, I understand what happened to me, you know, and I blame myself about this. I apologize to anybody who suffered at my behest of my vile words. I know it's my responsibility. I'm accountable for myself. I have to change myself. No one can do this for me. On the other hand, you need a support group and you need people that believe in you. But in the end, only John Galliano can, in a sense, have the discipline.
No, you're absolutely right in what you're saying. And I do have the self-discipline, I believe. I do. This journey's been a tough one, the 2 years and 3 months, and I'll continue. Yeah.
And what do you hope people understand about you today? Do you want them to say that...
That I'm not an anti-Semite and I'm not a racist. I know I'm not.
And Abe Foxman said what? That he knows that?
Yeah, I mean, with respect to Mr. Abraham Foxman, he has enough experience, you know, as well as dealing with racism and anti-Semitism. He's also here to promote tolerance, and he believes that people can change.
And atone.
And atone. I think he saw that I was genuine.
Well, he's in a better place to measure that than most. I mean, he spends his life looking at that kind of thing.
You're right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
You think one day you'll come to yourself and say, this may have been the best thing that happened to me, to suffer this kind of self-awareness of what I had done to myself and how bad I was, and therefore...
Charlie, I'm alive. I'm alive today, and I'm grateful for that.
And if you had not had a crash, you wouldn't be alive.
No. I couldn't have gone on like that for much longer.
Much longer?
No. That was really hell. That was really hell.
So it was hell before this, the hell that you were living in, before you said all those things, and before it came crashing down.
Oh, yeah, as I said, I'd become a blackout drinker. And, you know, when you wake up and you don't know where you are or how you got there or what time of the day it is, it's frightening. You're walking around fearful all the time. Yeah, no, it's not... I'm alive and grateful for this chance to be learning the things that I am learning. I don't know that many people have that chance. So I'm very grateful for that, yes.
And for those people who say, John, I listened to your story, I hear it, I believe you believe it, but I'm so troubled I can't be there for it. I can't accept it. What do you say to them?
I accept that. I can't control what people think of me or say about me. I can't control that. I accept that, but I will continue to make amends.
Do you plan to do more interviews? Do you plan to more...
Not really, no. This is, no.
Yeah.
No, that wouldn't be wise for me to do that.
So I started this interview by showing that video. It troubled you. In a sense, not that I did it, but that because I wanted to clearly have people understand, you know, what had happened.
I can understand your motives for showing that clip. Yeah, it threw me.
It threw you, of course.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. It's just a reminder.
That person that I see there is not the person you see today. It greatly saddened me to even just glimpse that person, the shell of John Galliano and what he was.
And the fear
and
that anybody might think that's who you are.
Well, that is not me. I've never held those beliefs, and there is no room in society for anti-Semitism and racism. I mean, yeah, no.
And there is finally this, to look at the upside of you and the experience and all of that, there is this sense of, when you walked in there and saw those fabrics and you worked with Oscar de la Renta, you felt like...
It was an amazing feeling. And to be in New York, I mean, it was like a dream. I never thought I'd experience that. That whole episode was like a dream, really. I'm working with the workrooms.
Yeah.
I never thought that I would experience that.
What's possible, I guess, is what I'm asking.
I really don't know the answer to that. I mean, I'm able to create, I'm ready to create, I'm feeling fit, I'm feeling good. It really all depends on these steps that I'm taking, and I mean, I hope that, you know, through my atonement, that I'll be given a second chance. A second chance.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Johnny.
John Galliano, thank you for joining us. See you next time.